Congressman Ryan and the GOP, this fairness fight is coming. Joining me now is Congresswoman Karen Bass, Democrat of California. Congresswoman, you're a member of the Congressional Black Caucus. You'll be at the meeting with Congressman Ryan next week. What do you expect to hear from him and to say to him?
Well, I certainly will be at the meeting, and I'm not sure. I mean, I think that Paul will come forward, and I think he will try to give a very intellectual description as to what he actually meant. But at the end of the day, you know, Paul Ryan has put his ideology in writing. He calls for repealing Obamacare. He calls for cutting Pell Grants. He calls for cutting food stamps. So regardless of what he says, he has written what he believes. And I think he might say that he stumbled over his words, but it's very easy to go to the collected works of Paul Ryan and see where he was really coming from.
But how do you intellectually say that people have no work values and no ethics for generations? I mean, but let's get beyond his rhetoric. I mentioned earlier that the Ryan budget would give millionaires a $200,000 tax break. It's in line with those in the right-wing media who say the 1% are paying too much in taxes. Right now, that's what their position is. Listen to this, Congresswoman.
Sure.
There's a loophole. Lets the rich get out of them. Well, close that loophole. Tax them to death.
If we eliminated the corporate tax, money would pour into this country. When Governor Cuomo says, I have enough money to help you out with this, he says, I still want to raise taxes. What's the message that you get if you live in New York?
It's punitive.
Imagine a tax-free $500 billion stimulus plan that no one watching this show would have to participate in.
The president has not been a friend to corporate America. He advocates high taxes to pay for an entitlement culture.
So, I mean, he can intellectually try to talk away from his words, but the policies reflect that, and those that advocate the same thing as I just showed you reflect that. Their policies say that.
Well, exactly, and we know that the person that he was quoting when he was, quote-unquote, inarticulate is a person who has a long track record of discrimination. You know, we know that. I believe that there is not a way that you can justify what he said. It really wasn't even coded language. I mean, sometimes people think in code, or people talk in code, but when you are saying inner city and that there is a culture, it's very consistent, and that's the one thing about Paul. He is consistent, so he does not believe that there really needs to be a safety net, that what poor people need is a kick in the butt and a pep talk, and that in terms of a safety net, you really don't need the government investing in a safety net like food stamps and Pell Grants and Social Security and Medicare. What you need is that you can have all of the volunteers in the community take care of all of the needs. So I think he's going to have a very tough time explaining his way away from what he said on the radio show, because I think there is too much evidence to back it up that those are his fundamental beliefs.
Congresswoman, Republicans have refused, I mean outright refused to extend jobless benefits.
Right.
And at this point, over 2.5 million long-term unemployed Americans have now lost jobless benefits. Now, some House Republicans are using jobless benefits as a bargaining chip for their right-wing agenda. They're demanding the building of the Keystone Pipeline, repealing a provision of the health care law that would cause 1 million Americans to lose insurance, and repealing the medical device tax without a plan to pay for the lost revenue. This is what they're bargaining with as they hold up unemployment insurance.
Well, exactly. And, Rev, you know that every time there is a piece of legislation that is critical like this, they have the same shopping list. The Keystone Pipeline comes up all the time. It came up a couple of weeks ago when we were discussing the Ukraine. So there's about 10 items that essentially would hurt working people, that every time it comes to something, they put this forward. And so the idea that we have 2 million people who have lost their unemployment for no reasons except for an ideological reason. The bill that passed, or that was under the works in the Senate, would be retroactive. And not only do we need to restore these benefits, but people need their back pay. You know that they lost their benefits right after Christmas. It's just unconscionable. You know, if you think about the economy, Rev, the economy should be roaring right now. The only reason it isn't is because of self-inflicted wounds.
That's right. Congresswoman Karen Bass, as always, thank you for your time.